Last February was the first Gleam gathering, which was actually really just such a cool opportunity. And I had the chance to present. So what we're going to be talking about, the main topic for today, my arbitrage tool thing. But what was really striking to me was this was also my first conference, not just presenting, but just in general. And I was really awestricken that I came back home and I was so excited about building in general. I was like, oh, I could do this. I was thinking maybe I want to get involved in building a YAML parser or something like that. Thank God someone else did it, because it turns out that's actually a lot more difficult than I thought. I did contribute, though, at least some of the typed decoding part. But that was really cool. And one of the things that I thought was, okay, I have spent a lot of time, because Gleam is peculiar in the sense that because it compiles both to JavaScript and to Erlang. You have two kinds of people who converge towards Gleam. You have usually the web and front-end developers coming from the JavaScript side, and you have a lot of back-end developers coming from the Beam side. And so when I got into Gleam, I was thinking about the Beam. I was thinking of scaling and all that. Turns out I ended up doing mostly just SPAs, mostly just web, using Lustre. And I thought, okay, I want to do more Beam stuff, specifically Beam. And I want to learn the Beam. Okay, what's specific about the Beam? Obviously, it's the whole supervisor thingamajig. And I thought, okay, how do I understand processes and links and supervisors and whatever gen servers are, etc. And I thought, okay, let's build a web app, because that's what I know how to do. Let's build a web app that shows a tree, an application tree, right? Like a process tree or process forest of a Beam node. And I figured, yeah, if I do that, just presenting that tree, I will understand. I will have to learn, okay, these are processes. This is how the links work, applications and supervisors and everything. Learning by building something is what's really cool is it takes you on all sorts of unexpected tangents. Such as, yeah, it turns out laying out, like doing graph layouts is really hard. So my name is Guillaume, and I've been doing computer science technically for about 15 years, but professionally more like 10-ish. I have been around the block in terms of what I work on. I have a degree that specializes more in Java development, but I've done a little bit of Kotlin. I've done a lot of networking and system, like a DevOps, SysOps. And in the past, I would say 3 to 4 years, I wanted to come back to development. So I started with Go, and I like Go. I think it's fine, a little bit verbose with error handling, but at least it doesn't have exceptions. So that's a plus for me. And then just following some YouTubers, people started talking about Gleam. That was before version 1.0 came out. And I thought, okay, that looks interesting. Looked into it. That's how I discovered the Beam, actually. And I thought, wow, the Beam is awesome. I want to write on the Beam. So the choice came down between Gleam and Elixir. I started looking at the Elixir docs. I saw exceptions. I was done. It was Gleam. So that's how I started writing Gleam. And Gleam was my first functional programming language. And that made it, I remember feeling like I was learning to code from zero. It's strange because looking back today, I feel like Gleam doesn't not at all get in the way of me coding. In fact, that's the best praise I can give it, is it's so pleasant, because if I have an idea and I can put it into code very quickly, it doesn't feel like I don't feel like there are many gotchas or no, you need to do it this way. Gleam, there is one clear way of doing things, and usually it doesn't take too long to get there as long as you have the correct mental model. So yeah, the reason I write Gleam is because I love the language. I think it's very pleasant. I've been writing Gleam for maybe 2 to 3 years, something like that. 2 to 3 years, yeah. I started a little before 1.0 came out. And yeah, participated in the Gleam gathering that was last February 2026. And that was an amazing conference, actually. That was also the first Gleam gathering. That was a big moment for the entire community. I think we were, unironically, like about 67 people. But it was like at a co-working space. And the vibe was really very welcoming, very open, because I could compare that to, so that was my very first conference just ever. And then I went to Codebeam Lite in Stockholm, so a few months ago. And I could compare the two. Codebeam was a lot more corporate and serious, and people with like a few more people with suits and older also. A lot of Erlang developers. But Gleam Gathering was just so many young people, and most of the people who came didn't even necessarily write Gleam, but just wanted to write Gleam, but didn't have the opportunity because it's not really well adopted yet. A lot of developers just can't afford to take on a side project on their weekends just to write Gleam. So one of the things that I want to do is to reach out to businesses whose developers are interested in using Gleam and try to explain maybe to decision makers there, okay, here's where Gleam kind of would make sense for you. Here's where it shines, and try to define how it would fit, like what would be a good project to do something in Gleam. So laying out the landscape for people who don't follow Gleam and don't know what it's about. And so if you want to be a top 1% Gleam developer, just write Gleam. You're already there. And I was really fortunate to be selected to present one of my small projects. Looking back, it's baffling that I was selected because when I went there, I talked to some of the people who were this close to submitting their talk but decided not to. And I thought, man, if you had presented this, there's no way I would be talking. There's no way my project is ever picked over yours. So I felt very lucky, honestly. And so the project I presented was this EVE Online arbitrage tool, which EVE Online, what the hell? Arbitrage, what is that? What does that mean? Sounds French. And it turns out I thought people might be maybe a bit disappointed by the talk because there isn't that much. If you already write Gleam and you're familiar with it, there isn't that much substance. And then most of the talk was about EVE Online and about order-based market dynamics, which why is that interesting? But turns out people had a lot of fun with it, and I got lucky enough that I got to talk about that again.
So that's what we're going to be looking at today, right?
In the context of EVE Online, EVE Online is so weird because it's so interesting. So it's an MMO that's been around for over 20 years. It came out in 2003, which that alone is telling that it really offers something unique. And it's very different it's a sandbox MMO. So that means the point is to let the users make the universe theirs. And to do that, EVE has very strong order-based market dynamics. So order-based means if you've ever traded stocks or crypto, you can place orders, so buy orders or sell orders for a certain commodity. And that's how the EVE market functions. There's actually thousands of marketplaces because there's one market per station, multiple stations per system, and thousands of systems. So in theory, there are like thousands of technically isolated markets trading the same commodities. And if you already know what arbitrage is, you know that's prime ground for making money here. Now, for more details on how all of this works exactly, you can check out my talk at the Gleam Gathering. Obviously, I go into more details. I have slides and everything. But basically, the whole idea of arbitrage is just you buy low in one station, fly over to another station, and sell high there. You see the same mechanism in crypto. You buy a crypto low on one decentralized exchange, and you would be selling it for a profit, for a margin at a different one. The thing is, there were tools that already existed to do arbitrage in EVE. I felt like they were a little lackluster, and that's how I decided that I wanted to build my own. So I built a first version in Go that worked in the terminal. It was fine, but a little bit impractical, and I wanted something graphical where I could save my settings and everything, and that's how I decided that I wanted to have a web app for it.
There's a few things. So I'll be honest, I watched the beginning of your talk, and then once I was back from the supermarket, I got distracted and did other things. But one thing I find interesting is, I suppose if you do that in crypto, you just do it, right? So you buy the thing, you sell it somewhere else, right? It's really quick. Whereas here, you have the whole cargo thing, right? So have real things that you're transporting and so on. So is there some kind of element of, because you're saying other people are also doing this and so on, so is there some element that you can get unlucky that, oh, okay, this is perfect, and then you arrive just, I don't know, 2 minutes after somebody else has sold all that stuff?
So those are super interesting considerations when doing arbitrage in general, not just for EVE Online. In crypto, yeah, you're right. The friction is extremely low. It's a matter of milliseconds. That actually makes it really hard to get into crypto arbitrage. Another reason is because you're trading real money. Obviously, there's going to be high competition. But in crypto, yeah, it's milliseconds. So the edge you would get on your competition would be, do you have special access with some of the major like blockchain providers in the space? Basically, it's all about backroom deals. It's, can you get the quickest access? And that's how you can make sure that your competition can never get in. In EVE, for the route that I highlight in the talk, so that's the route between the two biggest trade hubs, it's, depending on what you're flying, it's about 40 minutes to an hour flight time. It can be several hours if you're flying like a big freighter. And yeah, absolutely. By the time you buy something, by the time you get to your destination, the buy order that you are targeting might be gone. And in fact, so in EVE Online, one of the cool things is that scams are a thing and it's intended. You're supposed to be able to get scammed in the game. So there are multiple ways to scam people in EVE. One of the ways that I've been thinking of scamming people is by making arbitrage more accessible and more automated. I can basically force people to buy junk that I'm selling because I'm like baiting them with a real high, like a really profitable buy order, which the moment I see that they buy my stuff, I remove the buy order. I haven't done that yet, but you know, it's a funny prospect.
Yeah, maybe don't reveal it all here, otherwise.
I don't know if it's, if anything, if you're smart enough to watch this and then decide, oh, that looks like a scam and I'm not buying it, more power to you. I'm impressed. Even knowing that this is a possibility, thinking that someone is actively doing that.
And then the other thing is you just said, okay, you use the API. I'm not familiar with that many games that have an API. Did that come with that right from the start? Or is it
Yes.
something that developed? Okay.
So yeah, I believe that EVE Online had an API pretty much from the start. I may be wrong about that, but if it wasn't on release, it was very shortly after. The ESI has been a core part of the game for a very long time. And there are other games that include an API. If anything, I know League of Legends does. And a lot, I think probably a lot, mostly it's about statistics, so win rates and things like that. You can browse a user's public profile, things of that nature. But I don't think there are many games that have as extensive of an API as EVE Online. And that is by design. They want players to develop their own tools around the game. Again, that's in the whole spirit of making it a sandbox, right? You make it your own. It's a simulation of the real world almost, with less guardrails, less regulations. Yeah, so you can get scammed.
Yeah, a real world. How much is covered by the API? Do you have to fly and do all this by hand, or this is also could be automated?
So I haven't looked into whether or not you can place orders via the API. Okay. I don't think you can. No, I'm pretty sure you can't.
Okay.
And that is because there are players who do station trading. So it basically means they just buy and sell in one station. They never venture out into space. This is insanely boring. It's spreadsheet gameplay. And if these players could place orders automatically, they would not even need to log into the game. I think that by design, the devs don't allow that. If you're not going to fly into space, at the very least, we want you to log in.
I wanted to actually ask the same question as Jay just asked. So that gives me opportunity to ask another one now. Are you already really rich in the game then? Because of your tool?
So it's funny because EVE definitely has a class system in terms of wealth. So you have, for instance, people who are like just resource gatherers. So that would be like miners mostly. The mining in EVE is it's very safe in a sense, but it's also really low return. You're going to take a lot of time to get through the ranks to increase your wealth to be able to purchase your next ship. Like for instance, if it takes you, let's say 10 days to get your return on investment on a new ship, while the next tier of ship is going to be more like 100 days. And then the next tier before that would be an order of magnitude more. So generally miners are at the bottom of wealth. And I would say that with arbitrage, I think I managed to make 1 billion ISK in a day one time. Yeah, 1 billion ISK in a day, which is, there is a funny There's one of the major content creators for EVE Online. His name is Loru. In my friends group, we know him as the billionaire guy because he has this funny quote with his dad where he says, this is how I made 1 billion ISK in a month. Billion with a B." And it's funny because 1 billion ISK isn't even that crazy of an amount, but it seems really big to a new player who might only see a few millions at a time. But yeah, I would say definitely doing arbitrage is far more profitable than mining, which is what I did before. And as for other activities, I think the most profitable you can get is station trading. You actually, this is the crazy part, is the whole activity where you don't even go in space is probably the most profitable one, which is really sad and boring, but that's how, if you want money, and it's just like the real world. If you want easy money, be an accountant. It's boring as all fucks, but like it makes a lot of money because no one wants to be an accountant.
Okay, so what do you have for us? I haven't even seen any Gleam code, so
Maybe more about Eve. Maybe you want to talk about some biggest problems, biggest challenges with optimal trading, right? You mentioned one thing that
Right.
you have to fly and take into the considerations that you might take all this time buying and flying and then it's all sold. And also you have different, you mentioned in the talk, but we can also go into, you might want to buy just a little with a fast ship and you might also want to buy a lot with a big ship. There's so many variables, so many
Yes.
things. What was the most interesting, most challenging, the most exciting for you to solve, or the most that you didn't expect? You solved it, and oh wow, that's such a big variable. Maybe something there, and then maybe we can switch to Gleam and other stuff.
I guess I can demo the tool real quick. This is the tool. The idea is, let's say you select your starting and destination stations. So for instance, let's say I want to go from Amar to Jita. Yeah, but in the console, you can see that it's grabbing all of the pages for buy and sell orders. And then you can select them. You need to create a ship. And the ship will be stored in your browser storage. Let's say you have 2 cargo holds.
ships that I would already have in the game, and I would
Yes,
just
exactly.
tell the tool, okay.
So the idea is, so this is how much money you're willing to invest, your collateral. Accounting level is like an in-game skill that allows you to hit lower tax rates. So here, this is the lowest you can get. And the ship is, yeah, a ship that you have in your hangar. In theory, you could log in with Eve SSO. So you could log in with your Eve account and it could automatically fetch all of your ships from the hangar in the starting station that you're targeting and automatically display those. Thing is, that would require a backend, and I don't want the responsibility of making sure that the backend stays up. It's more a matter of, yeah, exactly. I don't want to worry about the uptime. This tool is only on the client, which is also a little bit scary if people use it a lot. There's no caching, and it makes a lot of requests to the API. And so let's see. But yeah, we can make 4 million here. And what's pretty interesting is that just by using this tool and like looking at the expected return, I can usually tell if someone else is doing arbitrage or not, because there is not like the total volume, like trading volume that you can make with this method is not super high. So the moment someone else does it, you can notice. Which is also, I'm shooting myself in the foot publishing this tool, because now I'm like creating my own competition.
So it's just one, not necessarily one server, but like one kind of logical server, right? Anybody who plays Eve, these planets are going to be the same, right?
So
Okay.
this is what's really cool about Eve, is there are no different servers or instances or things like that. Everything is, I believe it is technically sharded per system. So for instance, if you have a lot of people in the same system, it will enter what they call time dilation, which sadly has nothing to do with relativity. But the idea is just, yeah, when the server starts lagging, we're just going to slow down the tick rate of the game.
I like this, right? We can use
Yeah.
that at the joy. No, it's not slow. It's just the time dilation feature, right?
And actually, there's been some really cool news very recently. It's actually Haley who showed me that, Haley Thompson, about, let's see, it's the Carbon engine. Yes. So the Carbon engine, which is the game engine for EVE Online, was open sourced like last week. It became open source. And that's so interesting. So I've looked at it. It has 6 repos or something just for the core game engine. And then there's plenty more. I have no idea what I'm looking at, honestly, but it's really cool. And I think what's really unique about Eve is specifically the fact that it has a single instance. So you can use this game engine. If you want a game that's going to scale massively, you don't have to build your own system. You can just reuse this. It's so cool. And I'm sure there might be applications for like non-gaming applications as well.
Sounds fun.
What's that written in?
Yeah.
So I think there's some C++, there's some Python in there.
All the good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, again, you'd have to really look at it. I think they plan to follow those footsteps where they want to make it so that you can create plugins for it, which that would be incredible, honestly. It would make it way more accessible.
But it's just the engine, right? It's not the whole game.
Yes, exactly. So you don't get any of the right. You don't get any of the assets.
Okay,
obviously. Yeah. But the engine itself is open source. I think it's under MIT. So the whole point is you can't make money. Is the point? Non-commercial.
Chosen a different ship or added another one.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we can test that.
Does that affect it? Like, yeah. So I guess what Jay was saying, right? If you have a really fast one, then.
But basically, so the route I'm talking about, so between Amar and Jita, what I'm showing here, between these 2 trade hubs, it's technically a 46 jump, quote unquote, safe-ish trip, but you can make it way shorter if you take a shortcut that is very dangerous and full of pirates. It's like there is a singular jump in the shorter route, in the shortcut, a singular jump where the police will not come help you if you're attacked. And this is a breeding ground for pirates, precisely because it's the shortest route between the 2 biggest trade hubs. So plenty of ships full of cargo are trying to fly through. It's called Abazon. And the biggest pirate alliance in there is called Abazon Prime, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's really out there. I don't think it makes any sense. I haven't really thought it through. But so are the pirates also players, regular players?
Yes.
So could they somehow also hit these APIs and see when they somehow get slow? Assume that somebody would go somewhere or some kind of weird side channel thing.
There are already ways in the game to see if someone's about to fly through. Usually these pirates just basically they have scouts scattered across different trade routes, people who will just see ships coming in and out and scan them, to scanning cargo, right? Knowing, hey, what are you transporting? Are you worth killing? Because basically for pirates, this is what's super interesting for pirates in what's called HiSec. So that's the space where the space police will come help you. It's basically it's a matter of return on investment for the pirates. So the police, they have a delayed response, and the delay depends on the security level of the system. So a higher security level, the police will come sooner, which means if you're a pirate, a higher security level means you need more ships to take down a target. So your investment as the pirates is higher. And the lower security level means you can kill someone for cheaper. You're still going to lose your ships eventually, but it's going to be cheaper. And even on the safe trade route, there is a 0.5 security system. So the security system is between 0 and then it goes into the negatives, but that's a different question. It's essentially between 0.1 and 1.0. And anything between 0.5 and 1, the police will come help you. Anything below 0.5, there is no police. And at 0.5 is really tricky because the police will come, but they take a really long time. And those become really dangerous systems because it becomes worth killing you, even if you don't have that much cargo. And it's a matter also of how tanky your ship is. So the pirates, they not only need to scan your cargo, they also need to scan your ship to see what modules you have put, to see how tanky you might be and how many ships they would. And then there are things they can't see, which is your skills, and they can't see that. And that can influence how tanky you are as well, how many hit points you have. And there are online tools that allow you to compute basically for a given set of skills and a given fitting, a set of modules for your ship. It will tell you the maximum value of cargo until pirates hit return on investment by killing you. So it can compute what's the safe amount of cargo that you can transport. But then you can go way above
But
that
how
limit
do the pirates know how much cargo you have?
by scanning. They scan
Oh, they
you.
can
They see,
scan and
yeah,
then they okay.
yeah. You can scan a target. You can scan a player without having the police come after you. Though it does put a weird status on you, but the police won't come to kill you if you scan someone.
Is the police also regular players?
When I talk about the Space Police, I'm talking about Concord, which is NPC. There are NPC factions, there are NPC pirates, and also NPC empires. Concord is even like a sort of a third party police thing, which they operate everywhere in Empire space in high sec. So that's 0.5 to 1.0 security space. And yeah, they will come and kill aggressors.
But then you have to pay, even at accounting level 5, right? You have to pay 3.375% tax. Who gets that?
Oh, so the tax is to ensure that the game has a money sink. Because you can generate wealth in the game by mining, generally, because again, almost everything in the game is created by a player. So all the industry, all of the creating ships and everything, all of that is created by players. The market sort of self-regulates based on supply and demand. The only the only thing the game really gives you are those like fundamental resources like gas, ores, things like that. There needs to be a sink somewhere.
But is there also something that creates money then?
Fundamentally,
Yeah,
what's creating the money is killing pirates, essentially. You can kill pirates, you will get a bounty that's just inflation. It just creates money as well.
Okay, nice. Yeah, it's pretty realistic, right? The taxes, the money sink. It's just like Germany.
The developers of EVE Online, they have economists on staff because that part. There was a time for a couple of months where the tax rate, so the base tax rate is 7.5% currently. There was a short period of time where I think the tax rate was like 4%. And that doubled my margins for arbitrage. It was incredible because I'm making all of my money on very thin margins. So the taxes represent easily like 50%, like maybe 30% or 50% of it eats about 30 to 50% of my margins. So reducing the tax rate by half was enormous for me. But sadly, they weren't happy with it.
I think I have one more about Eve. We could obviously continue forever, but maybe at least this is one where it gets very interesting, I find, is that you said, okay, if you do it with crypto, it's real money, but isn't there some way to convert this into real money, right? I know there's these people, at least there was talk, some people in China that level up your World of Warcraft character, right? And then you pay them money for it. Couldn't somebody pay you to do some arbitrage you have the tool, right? They could just do it themselves. But is there some way of converting this? Or is it just not the right crowd, right? There's people playing with APIs and stuff.
So that is called RMT, real money trading. And generally, it's against the terms of service. You can purchase, and there's one asset that's called Plex, which allows you to do a bunch of things, such as extending your subscription. And you can either buy that for real money or for in-game money. So what that means is you can spend real money, acquire some Plex, and then sell that Plex on the market for in-game money. So you can spend your real money for in-game money. In theory, the opposite is against terms of service. You can't sell Plex or ISK, which is the in-game currency. You can't exchange this for real money. But at the same time, if I come to see you and you give me 10 euros and you want 1 billion ISK, what's CCP gonna do?
Yeah, I see. And in the end, maybe it's also a thing where you want to just state that once and ideally not make it get too crazy, but then you've covered your ass and it's good enough, I guess.
There was a huge controversy many years ago, because that was at a time where gambling with in-game currency, gambling with ISK was permitted. And that makes sense because a lot of players, they had so much ISK, they didn't really know what to do with it. So they were like, screw it. And it also makes sense. This in-game currency is perfect for gambling because you can have fun and have the thrill. And then if you lose it all, it's just pixels. It's not, you're still attached to winning because EVE is still a big commitment of your time, but you're not going to be destitute. And so it was a big deal at a time, so much so that the casinos were like the richest factions in the game by a long shot, and it was not even close. And there were suspicions of casinos doing real money trading because, to be fair, if you're sitting on thousands of real world dollars worth of in-game currency, it's very tempting to just sell it for money.
So, speaking of Gleam, you mentioned Gleam and Go and some gotchas and things like this. And I would think that starting with Gleam is quite similar to starting with Go. But you mentioned that you had some, it was not frictionless to start with Gleam. But do you think if you haven't had Go experience and would start with Gleam right away, do you think it would be an easy experience? But what do you think about starting with Gleam as a first language or starting with Gleam in general?
Oh, as a very first language with no prior experience in programming in general?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I really can't tell. I don't think I'm the right person to answer this because I think historically...
But maybe what problems you had like when you were coming from Go, for example?
I wouldn't say I've come from Go. I would say I've tried a bunch of languages prior to that, but I had done a lot of work with Java, a little bit of C, and also a little bit of Go, yes. But the difficulties were just getting used to functional paradigms.
I see.
For instance, you can't just select the fifth item of a list. It's these kinds of things where it's like, I need to think differently. It's not so much that there is a single feature that's difficult to grasp. It's just, I need to shift my mental model. And that took a while.
So you can't do that in Gleam? You can't say, give me the fifth?
There was in a very old version of the standard library, there was a list.at function, which allowed you to do that. It's since been deprecated and removed because if you're using it, you're doing something wrong. So one way of doing it is just, you could do an index fold. So you could do an index fold, and then the moment you hit the correct index, that becomes your accumulator, and then you return that. So you could do it still. But again, if you're doing this, then lists are not the correct structure. You can use a dictionary instead or whatever.
Yeah, that's funny. I never thought of that. Because like in Haskell and everywhere else, you do have it. It's not widely used. I don't know if I ever used it, but it's just funny to know, okay, if you don't have it and if you come in from, and you're like, how do I do it? And the language doesn't allow you. Yeah, it's probably a very funny experience.
How is the performance of doing this in, let's say, Haskell? Is it like very fast, or does it need to iterate through the whole list? How does it work?
So like you usually don't use it because it's unsafe. And
but it's linear, right?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Okay, that's what I wanted.
But in pure script, we have stuff backed up by arrays, and then in that case, it's a const, right?
Yeah. There's usually you have lists as well, but for some reason I always use arrays, and it's also because on JavaScript arrays are super fast, super optimized.
What's really interesting about Gleam is the way it's developed. So you can ask Louis Pilfold about this. He's the creator of the language, and his thinking is the language should only allow you to do a certain thing one way. And if something is not performant, not a good idea in general, the language just should not allow you to do it. So list.at was that. Can we do it? Yes, but it's a bad idea. So we don't want to make it easier for you to do something stupid. There is also Gleam in the context of decoding JSON Gleam types into Gleam typed objects. So you can decode JSON into Gleam objects. And the way the decoding works, like I have an article about how, what is it, decode from? I can't remember. There was a function in the standard library which existed for the sake of convenience and was removed And at the time I was upset because I was using it. But I dug into it and I started understanding, okay, the reason it was removed is because if you're using it, you don't really know the shape of the structure you're building. The compiler will try to build something, but you're not explicitly declaring what you're building, and so you don't actually know what you're dealing with.
I think I see what you mean. I think we have some crazy JSONs in our Scala repository for this reason. You have a service, you have a client and the server in Scala, and you use it. You don't know what the JSON is, and then at some point you're like, okay, I'm going to use this JSON somewhere else, and you look at it, and it's a ball of mess, and you're like, oh, I see. Should have looked at it before.
You can still automate a lot of the JSON decoding. There is a code action, so you can select a Gleam type, and with a code action, automatically create an encoder and a JSON decoder for it. So super practical. You still need to, but there are still a couple of things where you're going to need to fill out some details. Like it's not going to do 100% of the work. You still have to fill in some blanks. But so this code action is basically as close as it gets in terms of automating this whole process. But at the very least, there's still an explicit declaration of what the structure should be, being a catch-all function that's just going to try to do whatever.
Are you doing that maybe when you talk with the API?
Yes. So here's, for instance, some of the decoders and encoders for, so this is, let's see, for a list of buy orders. So basically I have this order type. So in order to purchase, we need to build basically trades. So that means purchasing at one given price and selling at one given price. So we need to fetch all of the buy orders from the destination and all of the sell orders from the source. So we need to fetch those from the API. I believe that this exact structure is like I built this type specifically so that it could immediately be ingested from the Eve API with a simple automatic decoder I talked about. So basically it's just there's a single variant with all of these subfields and that's it. So there's two things. So this is the decoder where I don't know if you're familiar with the use keyword in Gleam.
I'm not familiar with anything in Gleam, so I don't know the use keyword.
So the use keyword is probably one of the coolest features of Gleam. Basically, it avoids having nested functions. So the whole idea is,
I get it.
So decode field, the last argument is supposed to be a callback function with a single argument called duration. So instead of writing decode field and then opening up brackets for a callback function and then another decode field, another set of brackets, etc., nesting it, you can just, if you use the use keyword, it's going to know, okay, it's going to expect that the last argument of the function you put on the right side of the arrow, it expects it to be a callback function. And on the left side of the arrow, it expects as many like variables as there are arguments in that function. So essentially everything in here is like inside the callback.
So this reminds me a bit of something async await in JavaScript.
Yes. I love that I don't have to deal with it, but
you get rid of the callback, right? But it's a specific callback, which is called .then, I think, right? You can change stuff with then, and then they made this await thing. So I was wondering if maybe there's something maybe to make, but maybe it's all, I was thinking if it was like asynchronous computations or something like that, but then that's probably also callbacks, right? So you can probably use there as well, right?
Yeah, it's essential. When I say callback, I really just mean if I'm going to use the GitHub editor. Let's see. There we go. So instead of writing, let's say, use duration here, I could instead do, here would be a function that takes in duration, and then I open a bracket, and then everything, all of this is in the bracket.
Okay. So it's like a convention thing, right? So as soon as you have something that takes in the function as a last argument, you can then...
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And so that avoids like the deeply nested stuff. And it's super practical, super handy. So the automatic, like the code action that generates these decoders takes full advantage of use. It's use is one of the nicest features in Gleam and probably one of the more difficult ones to get into. I think especially if you're already used to having a lot of these callback functions. In my case, that was never the case. So it was actually fairly easy for me to, oh, okay, if the last one is supposed to be a function, yeah. But yeah, if you're already like used to doing like a lot of this nesting, maybe this might seem both really cool and maybe difficult to get used to if you've never used it. There are some really cool visuals of like how to convert from a classic callback to a use. There are some cool visuals, especially I think Isaac Harris Holt. He's like the bigger YouTuber in the Gleam space. He has a cool visualization and a very interesting video about the use keyword specifically.
And so you make one of those, like some decoders you need to be explicit, but then if you have a list of those, then you can derive it or automatically make it. You balance between making stuff parsed by hand and not by hand.
So basically, this expects a single. This is how a single order would be decoded. So it's expecting a duration field, an issued field, a location ID field, etc. And then in practice, I'm expecting the API to return a JSON array, sorry. And so this is why this is the actual, like these are the actual decoders I'm using. It's basically the previous one that you saw, the big one that's automatically generated, wrapped inside a decode list. So it's expecting it to be a list of these decoders, a list of these items.
I'm seeing a lot of these arrows on line 55 and 58.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the same thing that you can pass an argument?
It's another one of these nice features. Basically, so this is the pipe. And the idea is anything before the pipe is passed as the first argument of the function after the pipe.
It's the first in this case.
So you move the last argument to the front, kind of. And the pipe, you use like what you're giving it, you're moving to the first argument. And it's super nice, again, just to chain these. And the pipe operator you will see like all the time in every Gleam code base. Again, it's just avoiding like this deeply nested like function calls.
Yeah, it's very interesting because it has this kind of C-like syntax. But I can see how this, at least I think, I know some of this stuff from things like Haskell, but it's more approachable, right?
Yes.
Close to what you might be used to. And you even have the option, right? So you could write, you don't have to use this pipe, right? You can stick stuff in there. And then at some point you're going to give in because you're going to see that it would be so much nicer, right? It's just, okay, yeah.
Did you see the line 50, 53 mark? That they don't have the if else?
So again, I'm not familiar enough with functional languages to know if not having an if statement is normal or if that's just a Gleam thing. I actually don't know.
I think it's just a Gleam thing, but I think I think it's common to do it. I do it quite often, not always. I don't. These days, people don't review code, but I used to do it before, and people sometimes would complain, sometimes not. But sometimes it's very nice. You just say this, do this, one this, and this is this. But also, a lot of people try to avoid true and false to begin with as well. Just like trying to, so you don't make those mistakes of using true or false by accident. So you say the order is sell or buy, so you create those things. Parsing, you have to deal with it, and I think it's very convenient.
In general, so this is one of the fun things of writing Gleam with. I tried vibe coding, like completely vibe coding a pretty significant project in Gleam. And for some reason, the Claude absolutely loved using booleans when it's not a really bad idea. It's just completely unnecessary, like mostly unnecessary in Gleam. It's very rare that you actually specifically need booleans. Very often I think one of the best things about Gleam is like the very strong type system and the fact that like you don't have access to if, but you do have very strong pattern matching, which is just a more different way of doing if statements anyways. It's like a more generic way of doing if statements. I think that was also the thinking when developing the language of what it should be like. I think the whole idea was, okay, we already have this very powerful pattern matching that is essentially, I believe, inherited from Erlang. And if statements are basically the same thing. Like we don't need it. And yeah, again, like most of the time when you do if statements, like you're creating, it does make it a little bit weird at times. Like for instance, if you have like, for instance, list dot is empty to check if a list is empty. Let's say you have a list, right? So you declare your list and you want to check if it's empty. You can call list is empty. You can do that. And then it's going to be either true or false. And that works. But you can also do just case my list and take advantage of the pattern matching to say if the list is empty, then you do something. And in any other case, you do something else. So these two case statements are the same. This is the is empty function. It's literally, it checks if the list is equal to an empty list, and it returns the boolean. It doesn't. I think I could probably make a PR to deprecate and remove this function, because realistically, is it really needed?
I think it's a really great idea to force people to do the pattern matching on the booleans, because that just shows how shitty they are. And then you can argue really easily, right, that just define something that actually means something, right? So what was yours, non-something, it reads much nicer. And also you avoid stuff is not empty, right? Like when it's like all these double negations,
Yeah.
right? How do you have stuff like, we just looked at is empty and there was some equals empty list thing. Can you just equals anything in the language?
No, they have anything that has this, that is of the same type.
But anything, then it will, if I have a list of functions or something, can I still do this?
Let's say I have a list. Let's declare a couple of functions. Let's say this one returns a boolean, and then this one also returns a boolean, and let's say one last one that returns an integer, returns, let's say 10. So I can create a list. I can do func1 and func2. This works. And then my list is, this is the type. It's a list of functions that take no arguments and return a boolean. But then if I do func3, now it's screaming because it's not the same type. It's expecting something that returns a boolean, but it's returning an integer. And for func4, it's also going to scream because it expects no arguments and func4 takes an integer. But otherwise, it totally works.
So curious, can you run stuff here as well? Because if you define func2 to return true, and then you equals them, is it going to say they're the same or not?
Yeah, so let's say, can I do func1 equals, oh yeah, it would be func1. 1 equals func2. Okay, you want me to run it? I don't think I can run this right now because I have it in the pod. Okay, hold on. Give me a minute. I'll set something up to run this. Or actually, we can use the playground. Because yes, since Gleam compiles both to JavaScript and to Erlang, it's pretty trivial having it run in a playground. So let's see. So basically, the idea is that it compiles to both. The internal representation in both cases is very different.
Yeah.
Let's say you have a front end, like you have a full stack project with the front end in JavaScript, back end in Erlang. You're using technically two separate targets, and they don't interoperate directly. What you can still do is have a third shared project. So you'd be using a monorepo structure. You can have a third shared project with the where you declare everything that's shared between the two projects, and then each project would compile that into its own version. So the Erlang project would compile the shared dependency to Erlang, and the JavaScript one would compile it to JavaScript. And the thing is, you can write the decoders and encoders, and they will compile. You can write it once and compile it to both Erlang and JavaScript. So you'd have a type that is declared the same way in both targets, and then is encoded the same, like to the same thing in both targets, decoded into the same object in both targets. So the encoding and decoding is how you ensure interoperability.
Makes sense.
Does it not echo? Okay, let me remove these warnings. There we go. Okay, yeah, it's false.
Okay.
It's false. Okay.
Okay. So
And
it's kind
yeah,
of
good question. If this returns true, does it?
Oh yeah, that was the thing.
Yeah. Let's see. No, it's still false.
Okay, so I guess it compares the memory address or something.
So this is more of a debug. There is because Gleam has a very strong static type system, you can't just you can only print a string. So I can't print R, for instance, because R is a boolean. But what I can do, in fact, I don't even need to do this. I can just do this and then pipe into, let's see. I think so I need to import. Is there no toString? I guess not. So, okay, I'm gonna do some Gleam black magic. Oh, okay. I can just do, yeah, I guess I can just do this. And then, true. I'm just reinventing the toString function and then pipe that into print.
Do you have to always write these prefix things like IO? Is there a way to get println without having to type IO dot, or is that?
Yes, you can import like the function itself by doing this.
Okay.
There we go. Now I can remove
Okay,
IO.
so-
Though
Good.
I believe there is a page on the Gleam website about like best practices. I believe this is not best practices. You're not really supposed to do that. But for the sake of convenience, occasionally. It's in the language for a reason.
So there's two ways of doing it.
Gotta say, Louis, the language is inconsistent.
There are two ways of doing it. We can stop. We can try to do a bit of more. We can do two things if you want. Talk a bit about the Lustre framework or Lustre framework. I don't know how to pronounce it.
It's Lustre. Yes, Lustre. I think it'd be cool to look at Lustre, yeah, because all languages need their killer app. For Ruby, it's Rails. For Python, it's Python. But for Gleam, I really think Lustre offers something that just doesn't really exist. The best way I can sell it is that Lustre is a weird mix of, it's like the best of both worlds of Phoenix Live View and if Elm, like it would be kind of like that too. It's actually inspired by Elm. So Elm is, for those who don't know, Elm is a niche like front-end programming language that I barely know anything about. I know it exists. I've been to Elm camp. The Elm people are lovely. And in fact, Lustre was inspired by the Elm architecture.
And the Phoenix thing, I know Elm, but Phoenix is an Elixir framework.
So the reason Lustre is super interesting is because it really fully leverages Gleam's double target. So you can both do server rendering and render on the client as well. In fact, you can do like static single page applications in Lustre. And that's like kind of the easier way of doing this.
Can it do live view as well? Like send in updates to multiple things? And
Yes.
then, nice.
I don't have a working example, like a project that takes advantage of that yet. But basically, the way Lustre would do server rendering, it would do it through what it calls server components. So the idea is you develop your app. Okay, there's a lot to talk about. It uses the Elm architecture, which means it has a model view update. And what that means is, so for instance, my model here, so this is not the EVE Online Arbitrage tool. This is my resume, but I've built it in Lustre as well. And you can see like, this is my model for my resume. For instance, like here are all the variables I could have in my app. Now, for my resume, it's not necessarily the best actual use case because the resume could just be a completely static page. It doesn't actually need a model or anything like that. But anyways, this is like basically everything that can change in your application. And what's cool is because this is Gleam, you can here in my model, I have one variant of the model, but I can very well have 2 pages that have two different models or two tabs, let's say in my web app. So I would have two variants of the model. And so this basically the model holds everything that can, like all the data, all of the live data that your application needs. Then you have so this is just a function that creates the initial model to make it a little easier for me. And then that model is first fed into where is it? There we go, into the update function. The update function, the point is it takes in your model and based on a message, so it takes the previous model, it takes a message, which is essentially something happened and we want the model to be updated. So the message type, I can show you here. There is only one message for my resume app, which is that the user changes the language from English to French, for instance. So the message would be user changed message, and then to which language it was changed. The update function receives that message. And so I do a case on the message. What's the message I just received? And in my case, there's only a single one. I extract the new language, and then I update the model to include this new language. But yeah, I include the new language in the model. Once that's done.
Sorry, curious about this hashtag. Does that mean effect, or what is the hashtag thing?
So this is because this is the tuple.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, fun fact, but the tuples are strongly typed as well. So if you see the return type for the update function is always going to be a tuple that contains the model and something that's a side effect. So a side effect would be anything that, for instance, any asynchronous operation, like calls, IO, stuff like that. Anything that should be done in the background and would otherwise be blocking the view function.
You also said you just have the one message. If you had another one, would it still compile or would it complain here?
Let's see it. So let's say a user is stupid. Let's say.
It already complained.
Yes, it's all the LSP is already complaining.
Okay.
And then I can fix, add missing patterns. Boom.
And now
I like that you don't have any commas or semicolons or anything in between the variant, like on the right between messages. You just
So for the cases, yeah, it's based on the indentation. It's based on new lines. In other cases, it's going to be separation with commas as well. It's like a mix of both. But generally, and the formatter, there we go. The formatter is actually very strict. This is why this tuple looks this way, is because the formatter wants it to look this way. If I change it and I say, no, I want it to look like that, and I save, nope, the formatter disagrees. Same thing for comments, for instance. Yeah, exactly. It moves my comment back. So that's, personally, I think it's a little bit too opinionated. The formatter, it's good. It's just a little too opinionated. But at the same time, it adds the advantage of you always know how to read a Gleam code base. You're used to it already. It's not a matter of whether or not you like it. It's just you're gonna be used to it.
It looks much better than what the Golang thing produces, I think. Which I looked at this and they were all so proud of it, and they were like, "Oh, it's just one way, 3 lines, and it's already off the screen, right?" But I think that's a good thing, and it's probably more annoying because you don't work in any kind of team on Gleam stuff, right? I think that's what that's solving, right? Is that somebody says, "Oh, but I like that one better," right?
If one of the challenges for Gleam is that Gleam has no corporate backing, and no corporate. There are corporations that are sponsoring Gleam, but it's not managed or maintained by any corporate actor, which means adoption is really hard, and it makes sense to focus your attention on making sure the language is easy to adopt for large code bases. One of the pivotal PRs that is still pending currently, and I think deserve way more attention because it's only going to move forward if people start saying that they're interested in this. There is a PR, I think, for Elixir. Is it Elixir itself or is it Mix? I'm not sure. Basically, to add Gleam support in Mix, meaning Mix can just take a Gleam project and include it into an existing Elixir project. I'm not an Elixir dev. I just know that this PR would be super helpful to Elixir devs who want to start experimenting with Gleam. And sadly, at the moment, it's in limbo.
And Mix is a build tool for Elixir.
Yes, that's right.
I have a project in Elixir that I was just exploring the language recently, and I tried to add some Gleam integration. It's crazy. I think.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Again, I think this PR would be absolutely huge. So if you're an Elixir developer, you would like to write some Gleam, go find that PR, go complain about it,
And
say
give
you
it a
want
thumbs up.
want it merged.
Can we quickly look at the view?
Yes, exactly.
Finish up
So the model is the state of your app. Update is the app receives messages and the model gets updated. And the view is a static presentation of the model. All it takes, it's a pure function that only takes the model and returns here what's called an element in Lustre, which is it's just HTML.
And it has native Tailwind integration.
Oh, so first of all, yes, it does have Tailwind integration, and including Tailwind 4. So that's how I use it. But the bigger thing I wanted to show, there is a literal converter where if I have, I need to write HTML, that's going to be embarrassing. So it's literally, you just give it plain HTML and it's going to write the Lustre code that you can just paste into your view function.
Server side sends updates to the front end. Do you know if it's sending patches like div, so it sends the whole HTML all the time when your view changes, when your model changes?
It sends patches, I believe. I'm like 95% confident it's patches. This is super interesting because, so I believe, so Roish, I think is how you pronounce her name. She's, I think, the second major contributor to Lustre. So everything I've shown in Lustre here, this project is just, it's an SPA. When it comes to server-side rendering, the way you do it essentially is this whole application here. So here, the way I have it work in this project is I say, create the app and then start the app. Mm-hmm. What I can do instead is I can create a component. Basically, with one line of code, this entire app, I can just make into a component. And that component can actually be a server component. So going from an SPA to something that's fully server rendered is trivial. It's literally 2 lines of code. Then I need to write the server for it, which that's boilerplate, but less trivial. But the Lustre side of things is really easy. When it comes to how the update works, though, Rebecca has a talk at the Gleam Gathering that was just super interesting, going in the very technical details of how to optimize the update function. But when it comes to, how it would be server rendered, I believe, yes, it's in patches. I don't think it wouldn't be reasonable to send the whole DOM every time. And I think in terms of performance generally, so back 6 months ago, I think the performance was on par with React. I think today it's better than React. Probably depends on your benchmarks, and technically that's a first-party assessment. It's not my words, it's Haley's. But I think Lustre definitely has come a long way, both Lustre itself has made a lot of progress, as well as the JavaScript compiler. The Gleam JavaScript compiler has become a lot more optimized as well.
So I don't know if we want to go into this, but one thing I'm always wondering is that, so this uses Erlang, right? And I know Erlang or Beam, right? And that is from, like, the application used to be some telecommunication stuff, right? Like all these actors with little stuff in there. I could never come up with a good use case for building my stuff, but it looks like just the web page is already a good use case. How does that, do you have any idea how that maps to, like, how that's being leveraged for this kind of stuff?
Basically, what I have here is a project that's using the JavaScript target. So in this project specifically, in the web pages, there is no Erlang. There's no actors, nothing. But if I want to switch to server rendering, first of all, converting this to a server component would be trivial. Then what I need is an Erlang server or a Gleam web server for the Erlang target. The most common one is the Mist, and then you have Wisp, which is based on Mist and is more powerful. And that one, I believe, handles its own actors. It has its own supervision tree and handles its actors, its own actors. There are two relevant Gleam packages for, like, specifically for Erlang for OTP stuff. The first one is Gleam OTP. And this one revolves around actors specifically. But actors, like the way actors work in Gleam is interesting. My understanding is Gleam mostly relies on just the low-level primitives of Erlang, so processes, and then builds its own model of what an actor should be. For instance, here we're creating an actor. So actor.new, I believe this is just an initialization parameter. Then we have a callback function for handling messages, and then we start the actor. The other one would be the Gleam Erlang package, which actually deals with the lower level primitives of Erlang. So you have atoms, you have, process is a big one, obviously. So this is how you deal with the low level primitives for Erlang. I believe there is also a one for JavaScript. Actually, yeah, there is a Gleam JavaScript package as well, and it has the arrays, it has the promises. Symbols, I'm not sure what that is. See, I'm not a JavaScript dev, thankfully. And you might ask, okay, what's going to happen if I try to use these libraries, these packages? Look, so for instance, the JavaScript one on the Erlang target, what would happen? It simply wouldn't compile. The compiler would say, no, not the correct target. It's not going to work. So you cannot mix. Oh man, you can design a function to only work on a specific target, but not directly. Make a function that calls Erlang code and then don't create a fallback for JavaScript, then it wouldn't be able to compile to JavaScript, for instance.
How would you, I don't know if you ever do that, but if you want to use maybe some fancy JavaScript library,
yes,
like ELK or whatever.
I do use ELK.
So how do you write that? Is that the point where you write some Gleam and then you expect something on the other side to be there? Or how does it know whether it's going to work or not?
So this is a different project. Yeah, there we go. This is a different project. This is a YAML parser that I did not write. And what you do when you want to use FFI, so that would be using either JavaScript code or Erlang code in your Gleam project, you use these, what's called externals. Yeah, you declare an external, you tell it for what target. This for the Erlang external, the second thing is the name of the module, of the Erlang module you're targeting, I think, and then the name of the function. For JavaScript, this is the name of the file you're targeting, and this is the name of the function.
So there's only Erlang and JavaScript, right?
More backends. These are the two officially supported targets. There are community targets. There is one for Nix, for instance, called Pics. I believe there have been attempts as well at native target or C target sometimes. I think a native target for Gleam would complete the holy trinity of having front end, back end, and native. That would be incredible. Not anytime soon. Don't hold your breath.
Is the thing I'm just worried about is that you're the author of this function. So if I wanted to use this in my new fancy C backend, I have to get your approval, right? I have to make a PR to your. So I would have to go in and then add on my external annotations in that code in order to be able to use it from my other backend.
So let's say a C target is added to Gleam and we want to make sure Taffy would work with it. Then yes, for all of these externals, we would have to either manually write. So this is essentially just the prototype of the function, and we assume that it's going to be handled by the external. We can also manually write the fallback.
Oh, that's
I can,
cool. So you can have a
yeah,
native,
exactly.
or not native, but Gleam.
So this is, for instance, let's say that we have the Erlang external, but no external for the JavaScript, then this is the fallback function for JavaScript.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
And so, for instance, this is how I used Elk. So again, for this project I'm doing where now I'm writing a whole Sugiyama thing. But I wanted to, at first I had it rendered on the client, not because I wanted to, but out of convenience because I wanted to leverage Elk. And so my front end project had an FFI to Elk, which I pulled Elk through NPM, and then I created an FFI that pointed specifically to Elk, and that worked.
Yeah, makes sense.
And this is also how you would do FFI in Erlang. So for instance, if there was an Erlang module for graph layouts, this is what I would use also, and it would be server rendered.
I think we covered quite a lot, and I think we can wrap it up. What do you think?
I guess to wrap it up, yeah, what I would say is really Gleam is so interesting because if you're a backend developer, especially a functional programmer, and you can come to Gleam through the Beam and then start getting into front end development, which at least that's the path I took. I hate JavaScript. I love that I don't have to write it, and being able to to make websites for me was a big deal. Finally being able to share some of my projects to publish them online. And then from the other side, I've heard from some front-end developers who discovered Gleam and really fell in love with Lustre, and as a side effect started being more, if you want to start doing full stack projects, you have to start learning a little bit about the Beam, even if it's not too much. And then that's how you start dipping your toes. So it's really a very interesting bridge between two communities that don't necessarily communicate that much. And I think it's so cool that Gleam can show up at both a JavaScript conference and at an Erlang conference.
Gleam has marketing and really nice logos,
Yes.
LSP. It has also
Yes.
nicer syntax, right? I think it feels to me very much, reminds me of Elm back in the day, that it's very friendly, right?
I think it shares a lot of the same core principles with Elm. And even Lustre is inspired by Elm, like explicitly.
Yeah, I personally think also React is just a Elm thing in the end, right? Like it's, to me also, I still haven't seen any more reasonable or maintainable way of writing web apps than to just have these trees of components that you compose, because otherwise it's just easy.
The components, so I've mentioned server components in Lustre. Regular components are also a thing. It's just right now, since it's still relatively new, there isn't that big of a catalog, but it's definitely a thing. And I think there's also a pretty significant project that's in the works by Haley that's going to leverage that, but you'll have to ask her.
Cool. Thank you. That was really fun.
Thank you for the offer. I love talking about this stuff. So
Yeah, let's get more people into Gleam.
yes,
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Propaganda shall